The sound of footsteps echoed a little faster than usual through the quiet hospital hallway. April Wilson felt a strange heaviness in her chest that hadn't left her since she got a call from her father earlier that morning. "Miss Wilson, you look lovely today," an elderly patient said kindly as she walked past the nurse's station. April paused and gave the man a gentle smile, tucking a strand of her brown hair behind her ear. "Take care," she replied softly. She wore her usual light blue scrubs that fit her petite 5 feet 3 inches frame, and her makeup was neat and simple, just enough to help patients feel at ease around her. After 7 years of being a nurse, April had mastered the art of being calm, warm, and efficient. But today, there was a shadow behind her eyes, a quiet tension that clung to her like a second skin. In the break room, she sank into a chair and stared at her phone, reading the message again and again. "We're having a family meeting tomorrow. Catherine will be there too." That one line was enough to make her stomach twist. Catherine, her older sister, a name that hadn't been spoken in their home for 3 years. The leaves outside Mount Auburn Hospital were a brilliant mix of red and gold, a sure sign that fall was deepening in Cambridge. The sight reminded April of 3 years ago, of another autumn when everything in her life fell apart. Catherine had always been her opposite in every way. She was tall, slim, and fashionable. Her blonde hair was always styled, her designer clothes perfect, her makeup dramatic. A successful real estate agent who spent more time mingling with wealthy clients than with her own family, Catherine liked to post photos of luxury vacations and rooftop parties, making sure the world knew how glamorous her life was. And then there was Michael. Even now, April's chest ached at the memory of him. Michael, her ex-husband, had once seemed like a dream, charming, intelligent, handsome, a rising cardiologist, always dressed in crisp suits and polished shoes. He looked like someone out of a medical drama, but behind the charm, he was cold, calculating, and controlling. Their father, Dr. Joseph Wilson, was nothing like Michael. He was a kind, steady man, now retired from his long career as a respected heart surgeon. His short gray hair and warm eyes had comforted so many patients, and April, too, throughout her childhood. He was supposed to be enjoying peaceful days now, not calling sudden family meetings that filled her with dread. April couldn't help but wonder, what was the reason for this meeting, and why now? Since their mother passed away 3 years ago, the family had never been the same. April's mother had been a soft-spoken, gentle woman who still cared for her family despite living with rheumatoid arthritis for most of her life. Even in pain, she never stopped cooking, cleaning, or supporting her daughters. But when her illness worsened, it was April, who juggled nursing shifts and late nights, who cared for her. Catherine barely visited, always claiming she was too busy, and worse, in that painful time, she did something unforgivable. She stole Michael. April had first met Michael in the hospital cafeteria 5 years ago. During a hectic lunch hour, he had smiled at her and asked if the seat across from her was taken. Back then, she had no idea how deeply that small moment would change her life. Their relationship had started sweetly. Casual conversations turned into inside jokes, then weekend dates, walks along the Charles River, art exhibits, late-night talks over coffee. When he proposed to her near Harvard Square under a canopy of autumn leaves, she'd cried tears of joy. She had believed with all her heart that he was the one. Their wedding had been beautiful. April wore a white gown, and her mother cried with pride. Catherine, oddly quiet, had stood beside her as the maid of honor, her smile a little too tight. After the wedding, April threw herself into making their home feel warm and full of love. She packed lunches, baked apple pies, and tried to make every weekend special. They traveled, laughed, built memories. But it didn't last. Michael slowly changed. He came home later and later, often working weekends. He started making cruel comments. "You know, Catherine wouldn't serve boxed pasta. You're just a nurse, how are we supposed to socialize with my peers? She has better taste than you, don't you think?" April tried to hold it together. She took care of everything, cleaning, cooking, bills, hoping things would get better. Meanwhile, her mother's health declined fast. Her joints swelled, her hands curled, and her body weakened. Catherine didn't offer help. She made excuses. So April balanced it all, 12-hour hospital shifts, then rushing home to bathe and feed her mother. She barely slept, but she never complained, not even when her heart was breaking from exhaustion. Then, one night, it all crumbled. April had just finished a night shift. As she walked through the hospital parking lot, She spotted a luxury car nearby. Inside were two silhouettes, kissing. It was Michael. And Catherine. Catherine's laugh rang out, sharp and cruel. Oops, busted. Michael didn't even pretend to feel bad. This is over, let's get divorced. The divorce was messy. Michael demanded money. Catherine spread rumors. April saw pictures of them dining at fancy restaurants and vacationing abroad. Her name became a punchline in her own family. Didn't you notice? Catherine had sneered. Everyone did. You were never enough for him. Shortly after that, her mother died. April believed her mom's heart had broken from the stress of watching her daughters fall apart. Her last words, "I'm sorry," echoed in April's mind like a quiet apology she never asked for. Catherine didn't even show up to the funeral. That was the day April cut ties. She moved out of the family home and into a small one-bedroom apartment close to the hospital. She buried herself in work. The wedding ring was gone, replaced by her mother's old ring, a simple one, but full of memories. 3 years passed. She rarely spoke to her father, just birthday calls and polite updates. He had told her gently to focus on healing. She had listened, but now, that message. Family meeting. Catherine will be there. Now, riding in the back of a taxi, April stared out at the fading city lights. Cambridge was growing cold again. The leaves were back in their full golden glory. Her heart beat a little faster. The past 3 years had been quiet, painful, but healing, and now, something was changing again. What did Catherine want? What did this meeting mean? April didn't know, but she was ready to find out. April's return home, the truth comes out. April's heart skipped a beat as she read her father's message. Meeting, I've contacted C. She knew C meant Catherine, her older sister, the one who hadn't spoken to her in 3 years, the one who had taken everything from her. Soon after that message, April heard from a friend that Catherine had already booked a luxury hotel nearby, and Michael, April's ex-husband, had started calling lawyers. Clearly, they thought this meeting was about money, maybe inheritance. That alone told April what kind of people they were now, or maybe who they'd always been. As the taxi stopped outside her childhood home, April sat still for a moment. The old Victorian house stood tall and proud, just like she remembered, built in the 1920s. It hadn't changed much. The white picket fence was still in place, and the garden had her mother's rose bushes, now trimmed and ready for winter. That garden used to be her mother's pride and joy. April stepped out of the car and slowly walked toward the door. Something about this moment felt heavy. She pushed the door open, and immediately noticed the difference. The living room had been slightly rearranged. Her father's study now had a new file cabinet. On his desk, his computer displayed several open PDF files. A large stack of organized papers sat beside it, bills, legal documents, and receipts. Among them, April noticed something that made her heart ache. Unpaid bills from her mother's care facility. "Glad you're here," came her father's voice. April turned. There he stood, Dr. Joseph Wilson. His gray hair had gotten a little thinner, but his eyes still had warmth, except now, they also held determination. "I've been preparing for this day," he said quietly. April looked again at the documents. As it turned out, her father had spent the last 3 years collecting proof, quietly, methodically. He had everything. Video footage from the hospital. Records of unpaid bills from her mother's care. Copies of their mother's personal diary. Catherine's cold, careless text messages. Dozens of social media posts showing how Catherine and Michael lived a luxury life while their mother was sick and dying. "Today's the day I show them everything," he said. The confrontation. The doorbell rang. Click-clack. April heard the sound of expensive high heels echo down the hallway. Then, the voices she hadn't heard in years. "Still single? Hey, ugly, you haven't changed." April sat still. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, but her father's face didn't even flinch. The two walked in like they owned the place. Catherine dropped her designer handbag on the table, crossed her legs, and leaned back on the sofa. Michael looked around, unimpressed, as if everything bored him. April sat in the single armchair across from them. Her outfit was plain, her makeup simple, but her presence was calm and strong. "Father," Catherine said sweetly, "we've talked to lawyers about your will. I hope everything's ready for the inheritance." April flinched, but her father stood. "Perfect timing," he said firmly. "I have something important to share." The room shifted. I have terminal pancreatic cancer, he said softly. 3 months left. April already knew, but hearing it again made her eyes water. Catherine's smile froze. Michael's face paled. Panic was creeping in now. Dad, we'll take care of you, Catherine said quickly, her voice a bit shaky. I'll oversee his treatment, Michael added, trying to sound confident and important. But their father raised his hand and cut them off. That won't be necessary. He walked into his study, returned with a thick envelope sealed by a notary, and laid it on the table. Take a look. Catherine opened it and gasped. These are the care expenses your mother needed, their father said. $5,000 a month sent to Catherine. No payments made to the care facility. Fake medical records created by Michael. Bank statements showing designer shopping, vacations, and car purchases. He laid it all out. Security camera footage. Screenshots of texts and social media posts. Their mother's diary entries. Then he pulled up the final video, security footage from the hospital the night their mother passed away. It showed exactly where Catherine and Michael were, a luxury restaurant, drinking wine. You left her alone in her final hours, their father said quietly. Catherine's face turned pale. Michael began sweating. She waited for you, but you never came. The silence was thick. But we were working, Catherine tried to defend herself. Her father showed a photo from Catherine's Instagram. Best night ever, the caption read. It was posted that same night. He opened another envelope. This is my will. Inside, legal documents giving everything to April. All my assets, this home, my savings, everything goes to her. Catherine stood up in shock. That's illegal, we have rights. You abandoned your mother, he said, you have no rights. Michael stammered something about the law, but their father cut him off again. All evidence is backed up, with my lawyer, and the district attorney. Then he paused and looked each of them in the eyes. You have 2 choices, apologize at your mother's grave, repay every cent, and walk away quietly, or I go public. Outside, snow had started to fall. 1 year later, April now lived in the family home. The rose bushes bloomed again. Life had changed. She had been promoted to head nurse at Mount Auburn Hospital. Her patients loved her, her co-workers respected her. She had become known not just for her skill, but for her kindness and dedication. And she had taken care of her father in his final days. Every meal, every medicine, every quiet moment together meant the world. One day, they sat together looking through an old photo album, beach trips, Christmas trees, birthdays. You are our pride, her father said, smiling, yours and mine. He passed away that spring, holding his wife's photo in his hand. As for Catherine and Michael, their world fell apart. Their expensive home was taken by the bank. Michael's job in the city was gone. He was sent to a rural clinic. Catherine's business crumbled. Friends disappeared. Eventually, they turned on each other and separated. The last time April saw them was at their mother's grave. They came to apologize. Gone was the arrogance. They looked like strangers. April didn't hate them anymore. She just felt peace. Now, every morning, she sits on the bench in her garden, her father's favorite spot. On her finger, her mother's ring sparkles in the sunlight. Mom. Dad, she whispers, smiling. I'm doing well, I'm living strong, thanks to you. And in the breeze, among the blooming roses, she feels their presence. The past was no longer a wound. It had become her strength.